All right, we are back again for another exciting remote learning day with more genetics, non-Mendelian genetics to be exact. Yesterday we talked about incomplete dominance and codominance, and today we're going to talk about, multiple alleles. So multiple alleles is a type of inheritance where there are three or more alleles that code for a trait. So what makes that different from what we've already talked about is that other examples, complete dominance, incomplete dominance, codominance, usually you have two alleles that contribute to a trait, like the purple and the white flowers, right? Or the red or the white flowers that combine to make the pink flowers, but still all just two alleles contributing to a trait. So now we're going to look at this type of inheritance and some examples of it and how these different kinds of traits or these different genes that we'll be talking about are inherited with three or more different alleles. So the first example really quickly here is coat color in rabbits. So if you look at this diagram here, you have four different phenotypes and you have four different alleles that contribute to those phenotypes. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Again, what makes this different is now we don't just have one or two alleles contributing to a trait, rather now we have four to give you all these different combinations or phenotype combinations for these rabbits. And you can see which combinations of those alleles yield what phenotype. All right. So let's look at an example that is probably the most classic of multiple alleles, is the one that we'll do practice problems on, and that's the human blood type. So the human blood type is a trait that it's actually genetic. I don't know if you know that or not. You got your blood type from your biological parents. It wasn't random, it wasn't by chance. Blood type is rooted in your genetics. So the human blood type is a trait that we have that is based off of three different alleles. So those alleles are the A allele, the B allele, and the O allele. And you can represent these alleles with a letter A, letter B, letter O, or I little a, I little b, or just a little I, and we'll talk about why these are capital and why this is lowercase in a second. But you may see these two different representations of the alleles. All right? And what these alleles actually code for are the proteins that are on the surface of your red blood cells. So if you look at the diagram over here, you have four different red blood cells in the picture because there are four different human blood types. Do you know your blood type? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. Either way, the reason that you have the blood type that you do is because, one, you got it from your parents, and we'll talk about how that happens shortly here. But also, it has to do with these proteins that are on the surface of your red blood cells. If you have type A blood, you have type A proteins on the surface of your red blood cells. If you have type B blood, you have B proteins on the surface of your red blood cells. If you have AB blood, you have both A and B proteins on the surface of your red blood cells. And if you have O type blood, you don't have any proteins on the surface of your red blood cells. And this becomes important when you donate blood or if you were to receive a blood transfusion. We'll also talk about that shortly. All right, so three alleles contributing to our four different human blood types. So how does that work exactly? And what are the genotypes? So the reason that you saw a capital I and a lowercase I on the previous slide is because the A and the B alleles are actually codominant to one another. And what that means is when you have both an A and a B allele, if you inherit both, you have both proteins on the surface of your red blood cells. So you can see in this picture here, if this is your blood type, you have A and B alleles. So here's the genotype, here's the phenotype, both proteins on the surface of your red blood cells. If you're type A blood, you can have two copies of the same allele, the A allele or IA, and this would be your phenotype. You only have A proteins on the surface of your red blood cells. If you're B, you could be IB, and you would look like this with just B proteins on the surface of your red blood cells. All right, so these two alleles, the A and the B, are codominant to one another. So if you inherit both, like in the case of people who have AB blood, you get both both proteins on the surface of your red blood cells. It's not that one masks the other. All right. And then the O, or the little I, is actually recessive to the A and the B. So that's the reason why you had the capital letter here, and now for O you have a lowercase letter. So if you're type A blood, you can also be this genotype, IA little I. If you're B blood, you could be IB little I and still have this phenotype expressed. And if you're O, you have to have 2 copies of the recessive allele, or 2 little i's, in order to be type O. But you could potentially be type A blood or type B blood and be heterozygous for it, or you could be homozygous for it. All right, so those are the differences there, and that will be important as we proceed through some sample problems. In terms of what this all means for your genetics and donating blood or receiving blood, you have to make sure that if you were to ever receive a blood transfusion, and of course a hospital would make sure that they had this all squared away, right? You would get blood that matches the proteins on the surface of your red blood cells. So people who have A antigens, if they were to receive B blood, A and B do not play well with one another, and you would get clotting, which would lead to organ failure and death if you got the wrong blood type. So people who have A blood can only get A type blood, or they can get O type blood, because there's no proteins on the surface of this red blood cell, so you won't have an interaction with clotting or a transfusion failure. Same thing for B. However, people who are AB blood, they're able to get blood from anybody because they have both A and B proteins on the surface of their red blood cells, so no issue there. They're able to get it from anyone. O is only able to get it from O, because they can't have any proteins interacting with their red blood cells, but they're able to give it to anybody. So here's kind of a grand chart of all of that and what that means. This is a good thing to refer back to as you go through and start doing the practice problems today or tomorrow, whenever you get to them. These are the 4 human blood types. These are the possible genotypes that you can have for those 4 blood types. So here's the heterozygous one for A and B. And here's the homozygous one for A and B. So if you're A or B blood, you have 2 possible genotypes here. If you're AB, this is your only possible genotype. And if you're O, this is your only possible genotype. And this is the type of protein that you'll have on the surface of your red blood cells. And then this is who you can donate blood to if you have that blood type. So you can see O can donate to everybody. But the following column is who you can receive blood from. So if you're O, you can only receive blood from other O people. But O can donate to everybody, right? If you can see from here and then over in these 3 rows here. All right, so this is a good thing to refer back to when you start doing the problems, or if you wanted to copy it down, it's up to you, whatever you prefer. So we're going to do 2 practice problems together here to wrap this up. Show the cross between a mother who has type O blood and a father who has type AB blood. So again, you're going to write out your parents first. We'll start with the mother. She has type O blood, so what would her genotype be? You got it, little I, little I. And then for the father, he has type AB blood. There's only one possible genotype for him, and it would be IAIB. Nice job, right? I prefer to write it out with the I's because that's how I was taught in high school, so I've just kind of carried that through. But you can write it out in the other representation that I showed on a previous slide. It's up to you, whatever you prefer. So I fill in my Punnett square. My genotype ratios are 50% IA little I, 50% IB little I. So I have a 50% chance of having babies that have A type blood, and I have a 50% chance of having babies who are B type blood. All right, one more. Show the cross between a mother who is heterozygous for type B blood and a father who is heterozygous for type A blood. All right, so heterozygous for type B blood, that's the mother. What would her genotype be? That's right. I'm sorry, we did father first. IA little I, and then the mother, IB little I. You got it, right? Heterozygous. So in this case, when I fill in my Punnett square, whoop, look at this. Pretty neat. This couple has the possibility of having all 4 blood types in their children. I actually know a family like this. They have, the mother is A and the father is B. They have 4 children, and it just so happened that each one of the 4 children is all 4 of the human blood types, which is pretty neat, the chances of that happening. Because remember, every time a couple were to have a child or produce offspring, these are their chances every single time, right? So it's possible that that family with 4 kids could have had all children with AB blood, but it just so happened that they have each of their children with all 4 of the human blood types, which is pretty neat. They pulled off the perfect Punnett square. So you have 25% chance for these 4 genotypes, and then for your phenotypes, 25% chance AB, 25% chance B, 25% chance A, and 25% chance O. So pretty neat, this human blood typing stuff. At least I hope you enjoyed it. All right, I'm going to post, like I did yesterday, a practice problem set for you guys to do and work on. I'll post a quick video of myself doing one of the problems as a model to get you started. I hope you're doing all right with all this stuff. If you're not, please reach out to me. I would be more than happy to help you. All right. Thank you for all your hard work, everybody.